All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, Super Bowl number 56 is officially in the books as the Los Angeles Rams found a way to hold serve at home. This contest was tight throughout, but for the second consecutive year, the home team won the big game on their home turf as we saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do the same thing at Raymond James Stadium last year. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals, so close, yet so far, as they're going to be heading back to Southern Ohio and they have to be uttering to themselves, what if? And so close to winning the franchise's first Super Bowl championship. And, for the Bengals, I know there was some controversy at the end of this game. I will touch upon that, but first and foremost, the Bengals are going to look at the opportunities that they let go by the wayside, and as well as some of the questionable decisions on their part. You go back to the first quarter when Cincinnati was dealt with a fourth and short in their own territory, and Bengals head coach Zach Taylor decided to roll the dice and go for it, and he was stymied. And with that said, that led to the Rams' first scoring drive of the game when quarterback Matt Stafford connected with wide receiver Odell Beckham from 17 yards out to give the Rams the early 7-0 advantage. And I say that because you allowed the Rams to play on a short field. They got the ball in midfield. At that situation, maybe punting is good. You punt, get the ball, have the Rams start inside of their own 20-yard line potentially, and you know what? Make them drive the length of the field because at that point, your defense was playing pretty good, and your defense played pretty good throughout this entire process. The Bengals, to me, really let a golden opportunity go by the wayside at the beginning of the second half. I mean, you think about it, Cincinnati had all of the momentum at that time. Late in the first half, Rams wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. suffered the knee injury. And, I'm not a doctor, but it looked like the ACL, and unfortunately, it looked like the same ACL that, he injured a couple of years ago as a member of the Cleveland Browns versus these same Cincinnati Bengals. But nonetheless, you score the touchdown just prior to the first half ending. You go down 13-10. You get the football back. You get the football first, rather, to begin the second half. And on the first play of the second half, of course, Burrow goes up top and hits T. Higgins for the 75-yard touchdown to give Cincinnati the 17-13 lead. On the Rams' very first play of the next possession, Matthew Stafford is intercepted in on the Rams side of the field, and you're set up with the short field. And you had the momentum, and it looked like, okay, let's see if Cincinnati can get a touchdown to make it 24-13, and they just couldn't do it. And on top of that, that's credit to the Rams defense for stepping up in that situation because they knew going down by two scores really was going to put them in a tough spot, especially with not having OBJ out there at wide receiver in the second half. And that proved to be the difference because after that field goal, Cincinnati did not score again for the rest of this game, and that cost them. You're going to look at it. Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, changing it up on that Rams final drive as far as, going zone and allowing Cooper Cup to really, do damage against you. Because at that point, you got a double cup and you have to make somebody else not named Cooper Cup beat you. But you know what? Cooper Cup stepped up to his credit, and on the flip side, for the Bengals, that's going to be something that they're definitely going to question themselves about. Also, not going to Joe Mixon enough. I mean, Joe Mixon had 72 yards on just 15 carries, as he was, a tough part. He was a tough assignment for this Rams defense. And like I said, coming into this game, that I felt that the Bengals were going to be able to run the football on this Rams defense, We saw the Bucks do it in the divisional round. We saw the 49ers do it in the NFC Championship game. But nonetheless, I think the Bengals got away from that, and they weren't consistent enough with the running game, and that's another one of those what ifs for Cincinnati as they head into the offseason and say, "Wow, we were so close to winning a championship." Questionable officiating plagued this postseason, and it reared its head once again. We saw the Bengals, win their wild card game against the Raiders with a questionable whistle. And late in this contest, we saw some questionable calls once again. The holding call on Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson on a third and goal situation for the Rams. And I mean, it was clear, that was it was a 50-50 scenario at best, in my opinion. And the biggest thing for me is this: you typically Super Bowls, they're not really called tight by the refs. They let these guys play. They got here that far. But you call that penalty in that situation, and I'm just asking for the officials to be consistent. And the reason why I say that, go back to the first half when the Bengals when they had a third and goal situation, and it was clear that Jalen Ramsey was holding the jersey of T. Higgins. No call. Okay, you go back to the first play of the second half when Joe Burrow goes up top and hits T. Higgins. You can clearly see that that was OPI. You don't call it. My point is this: you got to let them play. And not only do you have to let them play, but as officials, you have to be consistent. If you're going to call it the way you did for the most part, you got to stick with it throughout the game. And with that said, that penalty should not have been called. And, with that said, that changed a lot of things because we're talking about now, instead of first and goal for the Rams, we're talking about fourth and goal for the Rams inside the 10-yard line. And it's one of those we don't know what could have happened. But nonetheless, like I said, the Bengals did have their opportunities. Now, on the flip side, Aaron Donald and his Rams defense stepped up in the second half following that the Odell injury. And of course, we saw the little dust up in on the Bengals sideline when Aaron Donald pushed Joe Burrow out of bounds. Clean play, legal play. But it was a situation, the Bengals offensive lineman came to the defense of their quarterback, and rightfully so. I mean, I know that Aaron Donald got into it with some of the Bengals players, but I'll tell you like this: if the shoe was on the other foot and somebody from the Bengals did that to Matthew Stafford, guess what? The Rams offensive linemen are going to go to bat for him as well. That's what offensive linemen do. But nonetheless, from that point on, Aaron Donald, he was able to ratchet his game up to another level. This Rams defense had 7 sacks of Joe Burrow in this contest, 2 from Von Miller, and then also 2 from the aforementioned Aaron Donald. You look at it, Cooper Cup, he really stepped up, especially on that final drive of the game. He had 8 catches in total, 2 touchdowns, 82 yards altogether. And, credit to him because he did this without Odell Beckham in the second half. And, the Bengals knew that. And, Matt Stafford was like, you know what? I'm not going to anybody else. I'm going to my guy. And that's a big reason why the Rams are Super Bowl champions right now. Uh, for the second time in the Super Bowl, the Bengals were burned by a late fourth quarter drive. And you go back, if anybody's old enough to remember Super Bowl 23, the Bengals were up 16-13 late in that game versus the San Francisco 49ers. And of course, Joe Montana led the Niners down the field on a 90-plus yard drive. Of course, you're always going to remember Lewis Billups dropping the interception, which would have won the game for the Bengals. And of course, on the very next play, what did Joe Montana do? He hit John Taylor in the end zone for the touchdown. And of course, the rest is history. And right here, the Bengals had the 20-16 lead. They had the Rams on fourth down in their own territory. And of course, Cooper Cup stepped up once again, this time with the handoff coming off the reverse. And, they just went out there and made the plays, and the Bengals defense, unfortunately, was unable to make the stops. Now, the Bengals did force the turnovers from Matt Stafford. He had 2 more picks tonight, but he was 26 of 40 for 283, The Bengals did create a lot of pressure with their front four, and I said the Bengals were going to be able to do that. They have rushed the passer well throughout this season, and they did once again. I just think that late in that contest, they would have been better served, sticking with the man-to-man, little zone here or there, and maybe mixing it up, bringing some more pressure from backs as well as DBs as well. We saw this a couple of years ago from the San Francisco 49ers in their Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, where they were relying so much on their front four that, in that fourth quarter, their front four ran out of gas. And you know what? Patrick Mahomes was able to pick them apart. Last year in the Super Bowl, we saw the Bucks rely on their front four. The only difference was the Bucks had the lead, and they had a big lead in that contest, and that allowed their D line to really tee off because we knew that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to be one dimensional. At that point, you still had to be wary of the run if you're the Bengals, even though the Rams really were unable to run the football effectively tonight. But nonetheless, the Rams just went out there on offense and made the plays. Like I've always said, what you cannot do always shows up at the most inopportune time. And the Bengals offensive line has been an Achilles heel for this team all season long. We saw Joe Burrow get sacked 9 times in the divisional round versus the Tennessee Titans. And guess what? He got sacked 7 more times tonight. If you go back to the early stages of the second half, I think the Bengals did a solid job of rolling the pocket for Joe Burrow and allowing him to escape that Rams front four and do things as far as passing the ball down the field. Later on in the game, we didn't see that. I know that Joe Burrow, he appeared to hurt that knee, and that changed that. But even before that, Joe Burrow was not moving around enough in that pocket, as far as I'm concerned. And with that said, that allowed the big bodies of the Rams up front to tee off. And of course, the rest is history in this one. Now, I know that there are going to be some people that are going to say, you know what? Wow, Joe Burrow's in his second year, first full year as a starter in the NFL, and he's going to have chances to get the Bengals back to this big game. Yes, he will. But at the same time, and like I talked about it last night on this channel, don't just pencil Joe Burrow and the Bengals to be here consistently. And the reason why I say that is the talent at the quarterback position in the AFC. I talked about it last night. I'm going to talk about it again briefly right here. You got Josh Allen with Buffalo. You got Patrick Mahomes with Kansas City. You got Justin Herbert with the Chargers. You got Lamar Jackson with the Ravens, just to name a few. And with that said, when you have to go through so many guys like that consistently, it's not a slam dunk that you could, get back to this game consistently. You think about Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have made the AFC Championship game in each of the last 4 years. But nonetheless, they have one title to show for it, and that's not trying to diminish what Kansas City was able to accomplish. But it's just so tough because you got a slew of young studs at the quarterback position in the AFC that what they're going to make it tough for one guy to go out there and do it. And then on top of that, for the Bengals, they have to be wary of what happens to every Super Bowl loser. And I say that because, okay, we know with the Super Bowl champion, that team is going to get everybody's best punch coming into the next season. But also, the same can be said about the Super Bowl runner up because you are still a litmus test for a lot of teams that are going to trying to go out there and prove themselves in the following season. On top of that, as a Super Bowl loser, the entire league gets to sit back and watch that game and see what you cannot do in order to win. So they're going to try to go out there and exploit you. We saw it this past season where a lot of teams looked at that game tape from Super Bowl 55 and said, hey, you know what? Let's tee off and put pressure on Patrick Mahomes and let's take away the deep pass to Tyreek Hill. We saw a lot of teams do that. And of course, Kansas City had to make the adjustment in midseason in order to turn things around for themselves and of course make that run in the postseason. So now, if you're the Bengals, you definitely got to address your offensive line because teams that are going to be facing Cincinnati next year are going to say, "Hey, you know what? Let's dial up the pressure and let's come after Joe Burrow with this offensive line right now in order to take him off of his game and not allow him to get the football to the likes of Tyler Boyd, not allow him to get the football to the likes of Jamar Chase." So that's definitely going to be something to look out for in the 2022 NFL season. RPA 316 is chiming in. How's it going, man? Do you believe the Bengals, in other words, was a flux? In other words, you do you see them being back in the Super Bowl? Like I just said, it's not a slam dunk. They have the potential to do it. But again, like I said, it's so difficult and it's going to be so difficult on that AFC side due to the talent at the quarterback position. And not just the quarterback position. You look at the division that the Bengals are in. You still got to deal with the Ravens. And, you got to get Lamar Jackson back if you're Baltimore and you're healthy. Pittsburgh, they have a solid defense, but what are they going to do at quarterback? We got to wait and see. And we got to wait and see what Cleveland's going to do as well. Again, that division sent three teams to the playoffs in 2020. But the Bengals were the only team in that division that didn't make the playoffs. They had a fourth place schedule. So obviously things are going to turn around. They get a first place schedule this year as winners of the division, and they're not going to creep up on anybody. And that is not in any way, shape, or form trying to diminish what the Cincinnati Bengals accomplished this season because this team did accomplish many great things, but nonetheless, it's the nature of the beast. When you get to this point where the Bengals did, regardless if you win or lose, you're going to be on everybody's radar come next season. You're going to be on the radar of the teams in your division. Obviously, since the Bengals eliminated the Kansas City Chiefs, Tennessee Titans, as well as the Vegas Raiders, all of those teams are going to be gunning for the Cincinnati Bengals as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bengals do this offseason. And it begins with their ability to address their offensive line. Now, on the flip side for the Rams, how different is this team going to look next season? Because you're hearing rumors that Sean McVay might step away from coaching. You're hearing rumors that Aaron Donald might retire. You're hearing, and I mean, at 40 years of age, Andrew Wentworth at left tackle. I mean, he's no spring chicken in regards to football terms or sports terms in general. So, those are some key positions right there. I do think that the Rams, first and foremost, are going to be able to get Odell Beckham Jr. back now at a hometown discount. And it's unfortunate for him because, he was having a big game and to have that knee injury. Odell is a guy that likes the spotlight. We know that the bigger the stage, the bigger the Odell plays. But nonetheless, now he's got to start back from scratch. He's not going to get that big payday. Hopefully, for his sake, he can rehab and he can come back at some point in the 2022 NFL season, but it's not going to be right away. And, because of that, the Rams are probably going to be able to re sign him on the cheap. On the flip side, does Aaron Donald walk away? And you're talking about one of arguably the best defensive player of this era and one of the better defensive players of all time. That's a lot to replace right there if you are the Los Angeles Rams. If he desires to walk away, and the same thing could be said in regards to Sean McVay, the head coach, because listen, it's a lot of hours and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that are put into winning a championship at any level. You look at it right there, and I mean, Sean McVay, a lot of these head coaches in the NFL, they're in the office at 5 a.m. They're not home. They're probably like 11 or midnight. That's very taxing on a body. It's very taxing on a family if he has one. And, Sean McVay is still a young guy. He's probably looking at the stress and saying, hey, you know what? Do I want to do this or do I want to be in a broadcasting booth where, I can get paid a lot of money and not have to deal with the same stress? I mean, look, Tony Romo right now is getting anywhere between 15 to $20 million a year from CBS to call games. Not as stressful as playing quarterback, not as stressful as coaching either. So, if you're Sean McVay, you definitely want to think about that. Got some more insights in the chat box here. Once again from RPA 316. Von Miller made a major difference in that defense. Yes, he did. You look at Von Miller, a former Super Bowl MVP. in Super Bowl 50 with the Denver Broncos. And Von Miller is one of the better pass rushers of this era. And I think with what we saw tonight, if anybody doubts, or if which I highly doubt, but if anybody wanted to doubt Von Miller being a Pro Football Hall of Famer, I think he just sealed the deal tonight. You look at the way that Von Miller has played throughout his entire NFL career. Of course, second overall pick in the 2011 NFL draft, right behind Cam Newton, who came out of Auburn. Von Miller came out of Texas A&M, and he's a shorter pass rusher from the linebacker position, but he plays with tremendous lean, and he's so strong, and that gives him the ability to get around that edge, go up against the top offensive tackles in the NFL, and of course, get to the quarterback. That was a situation right there. I think that a lot of people were surprised to see Von Miller on the market by the Denver Broncos. You can't argue, you can't be mad at him for that. Broncos traded him. But nonetheless, he was on the market, and his presence, takes away from an opponent of the Rams, their ability to focus on Aaron Donald, their ability to focus on Leonard Floyd, and it opens up other people in that offense. Very rarely do you have a situation where a team can say, you know what, they have two future Hall of Famers on their front four, at least in this day and age. And that's the advantage that the Rams, and I'm not questioning it, but that's the advantage that the Rams had into this season. From Fallon Martin, a great mind of hers. Yes, she does feel bad for OBJ right now, and you saw the tears, and it was genuine because the thing is like you don't you don't take for granted being able to get to the Super Bowl. And you think about how long OBJ played. And, credit. And with that said, that's why CJ Ozoma went out there and did everything that he could to rehab and have himself ready to play for the Bengals in this game. Of course, we saw the Bengals starting tight end go down with that knee injury in the AFC Championship game versus the Kansas City Chiefs. But you know what? He was out there. To his credit, he rehabbed. I didn't expect him to have a big impact on this in this game for Cincinnati, and of course, we saw that he was mainly a decoy. But nonetheless, to his credit, to go back out there and be ready. And for OBJ, you get so close, and of course, he's going to get a championship ring. But nonetheless, not being able to contribute in that second half, really, I guarantee you, it hurt him. On the flip side, for Stan Kroenke, the Rams owner, it was a costly Super Bowl win, but he got his wish. And I say that because, of course, the Rams controversially left the city of St. Louis several years back in order to come to LA. And of course, I'm not really going to go into too much details on that tonight, but nonetheless, we recently saw the NFL settle with the city of St. Louis for $790 million. And most people won't see $790 million in a lifetime. And that's what the NFL had to pony out to the city of St. Louis. So it was a costly win. But nonetheless, if you're Stan Kroenke, you got your championship. And of course, the city of St. Louis got their money, but I guarantee you there are plenty of people back there that still wanted to see the Rams stay in St. Louis because they were there for the better part of 2 decades. And, they did have a fan base there, but you know what, especially in those last couple of years, the Rams really weren't trying. And we saw that. And, the Rams really turned it up uh, since they arrived in LA to build a contender. We saw Les Snead and Sean McVay be very aggressive, especially Les Snead, because I mean the Rams have given up so many first round picks to get to this point, but nonetheless, you can't question it anymore now that they have themselves the championship that they were seeking. But nonetheless, it like there's going to be a lot of questions for this team going forward in the next couple of weeks. Especially around McVay, Aaron Donald, Whitworth, you name it. So those could potentially be big shoes to fill for this club heading into next season. And of course, just like it is for the Bengals, the Rams are going to get everybody's best punch next year due to the fact that, hey, they are the defending champs. So, of course, teams want to go out there and prove themselves against the defending champs. So, like, you've climbed, and if you're the Rams, you've climbed and you've ascended to the top of the mountain. Now everybody's trying to pull you off. So, it's one of those where you get to the top, and now how do you deal with the success? That's going to be the next step for the Rams heading into next season. More questions. Will the Chargers be able to follow suit? Because, of course, the Chargers came to LA at the same time as the Rams. And like the Rams, the Chargers got their start in LA in the American Football League. Of course, after a brief period of time there, they went to San Diego, but nonetheless, they are the other team that calls SoFi Stadium home. They have that young studded quarterback in Justin Herbert. But with that said, it's going to be imperative for the Chargers to put a quality team around Mr. Herbert going forward if they want to get where the Rams currently are. Now, Super Bowl number 57 will be at State Farm Stadium in Glendale next February, and that is the home of the Arizona Cardinals. And for the Cardinals, they are on the clock now because they are going to look to make it 3 consecutive years where the home team won, got to, and of course, won the Super Bowl. A lot of questions about Kyler Murray, the Cardinal starting quarterback. I will address those later on in the week. Overall, tonight was a very competitive game, as was expected. It's just unfortunate that that final drive for the Rams has some controversy swirling around that due to the officiating. Like I talked about it before, you got to let them play. If you were letting them play all game long and you were letting certain things slide, if you're the officials, you got to keep it up for the final, couple of minutes, and just let it be. The Rams will now be the hunted, like I said, and so will the Bengals. So both of these teams have to adjust to that notion heading into 2022. But the longest NFL season is officially in the books. Of course, the NFL added an additional regular season game this year. It was highly received, very competitive season for the most part. For the most part, it was also a very competitive postseason as well. A lot of games coming down to the final minutes. We saw a lot of games decided by walk-off field goals or walk-off touchdowns. And of course, the rest is history. So now it's on to the NFL Combine. Let's see what happens in free agency, and let's see what happens in the NFL draft, as all 32 teams will now take a sigh of relief to breathe, reflect on this season, get back on track as the road to Glendale and Super Bowl 57 has officially begun. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Want to thank R. Pierre 316 for chiming in on the chat. Also want to thank my lovely wife Fallon for chiming in on the chat as well. And I want to thank all of you folks for tuning in. I'll be back on here very soon, and I hope that you enjoyed tonight's game. But with that said, this is William Martin signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.